Welcome to the Podunk Polymath, a podcast dedicated to the sentiments of a secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southern SJW and skeptic. I'm your host, Chris. Come on in. Episode 57 has arrived. Sorry I wasn't here last week. I didn't feel like doing one. I feel bad, so don't make me feel any worse for not doing an episode, even though not many people listen. That's okay. I do it for my own enjoyment mostly anyway. Anyway, for the pre-ramble, lots of fucked up news going on, but we won't concentrate on that because you can find that everywhere popping up in your Facebook feed. I have a little positive note, a little carefree thing. Oktoberfest was this week. I met up with William Ferguson, who was on an episode where he spoke about his story, and his their boyfriend, Dan. Dan? Yeah, that's right, Dan. We met up there, overcast, muggy as shit though. Lots of beer was imbibed, at least by myself, because I'm an alcoholic. Saw some street preachers there, which was funny. I got a picture with one of them. One of them tried to give us some material or whatever, and I was like, we're good, we're atheists, we're one of the guys that going to hell, we're the ones going to hell. And then he started saying we're not made in the image of God, and all kinds of dumb shit. I'm like, okay, man, whatever, we're rolling on. He's a whole bunch of ignorant shit. Somehow the coming from monkeys thing came up. I don't really remember. I ignored him for the most part because it's not really worth my time. I'm not one of those people who has the patience or the energy to deal with fuckers like that. So anyway, it was packed there. A lot of people. There's a Ferris wheel. Lots of booths. I found a booth for a local beard grooming. It was called a male grooming, but it's mostly for like your beard and shit. They're local. I got their card. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I think I got a picture of it. I'll maybe put that up on the show notes or on the Facebook page. And they had all the, the good stuff, which I had just last night gotten a brush and a comb, and I did a video of it for all y'all who were lucky enough to see me demonstrate the use on my luxurious, sexy beard. You got to see that. So anyway, they had beard soap. They had, the regular balms, brushes, combs, all that kind of good stuff. So I might check them out if I remember to. I'm not very good with remembering things, so we'll see. Other than that, it was just the usual stuff. People selling their wares. It was one of these things, it's just pretty much the same shit over and over again. There's nothing really. They have food trucks from different places. The beer itself, I got a pint. Well, not a pint. One of those steins, those metal glass steins, which I've forgot and paid $25 for and forgot it. That's awesome. So, what do I need money for anyway? We're all going to die soon. Who cares? So anyway, I got actually a pint and a half of beer, I guess, and was drinking on that, and didn't get terribly drunk because that Oktoberfest, that Marzen the alcohol content isn't really that high. So, it's not like super intoxicating, so it's more of a drinking beer. So we walked around, and mostly we just sat there talking the entire time. We were sitting next to some band stand or whatever, and they started playing. It was horrible. It was just bad. First, they started playing some faux Oktoberfest German shit. I was like, no, you don't need to do that. And then they started playing country songs. I'm like, okay, that's not even remotely German, so why the fuck are you playing that? So whatever. Anyway, it was okay. I would have liked the weather to be a little better because it started raining a little bit towards the end, and I don't know. I didn't like waiting in line for that beer, and there just wasn't that much cool stuff. It's, like I said, the same shit as usual, but it was good to get out and hang out with William and their boyfriend. That was fun. It was good to hang out with them. So I guess that was the most important part. After that, they Ubered home, and I decided I was going because we were in Hipsterville. So I said, let me go see what gentrification tastes like. So there's a pizza joint right around the corner that prides itself in taking forever to fix a pizza because, their shit's so good, apparently, that you got to wait an hour to get a deep dish pizza. I'm like, okay, whatever. Oh, and they only serve beer in cans. And I forgot why. The justification's some hippie shit. I don't fucking know. It's whatever. Pretentious fuck. Fucking bullshit. Well, I don't even think that place was there a couple years ago. Because all that shit down there, all those apartments and condos and shit just popped up within the last year. So anyway, there I was, sitting there, waiting for my expensive ass pizza. And it did take about a fucking hour while I was drinking. They didn't even have the great craft beer. They had craft beer, but it wasn't that great. They didn't have a great selection. So anyway, I finally got in, and it was garbage. Fucking garbage pizza. Paid too much for garbage pizza. I was afraid of that. It was deep dish. It was way too much sauce. Too much fucking sauce. Not enough cheese. Was not worth me waiting an hour or the $20 I paid for it. So don't go there. 312 Pizza Company, don't fucking go there. That's all I'm saying. Then I went home and then passed out because I was drunk. But anyway, I'd been drinking all night. I Ubered both places. Well, actually, I got Mom to come and get me. Don't judge. She's cheaper than an Uber, okay? Anyway, so that was my Saturday fun time. Now, something not so fun, I found out that there is going to be some sort of white nationalist Nazi shit going on in Shelbyville, some kind of protest in Shelbyville. And then I just found out they're thinking about doing one in Murfreesboro. And the one in Shelbyville is going to be, they're going to be protesting on the sidewalk if they can't get a permit or something. There's already a counter protest that's popped up. Event page has popped up, which I have already shared. If I haven't already shared it on the Facebook page, then I will share it on there in the show notes as well. But, this is just ridiculous. I don't know why they think they can get away with this shit still. It's like they're just trying to start shit. And one of the things the organizers said, well, it's kind of out of the way. Nobody's going to be paying attention since it's like in rural Tennessee, I guess they think. Apparently they don't know what the internet is because it doesn't matter where the fuck it is. As soon as you put word out that you're doing that shit, it's going to be everywhere. So, I don't know what they're talking, what they're thinking. I don't think they know how things work, which isn't terribly surprising considering their mindset and other things. So, and I will be attending. So there's a couple other people I know are going. Pretty sure they're going. So, hopefully it won't devolve into anything chaotic, but you never know. But I'm thinking enough people to show they're up there that maybe it won't even happen. We'll see, but it might turn out like it did in Laguna Beach I went to, where you didn't even hardly know they were there. So we'll see. If you're in the area, hit me up if you need a ride or something. I'll see if I can't help you out. I'm going with somebody else probably, and they live somewhere else, so it depends where you live, and we might be able to help you out, so we'll see. So, yeah, keep your eyes out for that. I don't remember the organization, what it's called off the top of my head, so I'm going to do a little digging, and I'm going to put out the counter protest for sure. The event page on Facebook, I don't know if I'll do it for the other one, because I don't know if I need to give them clicks and shit. They don't need that. So anyway, I guess that's it for the pre-ramble. On the palaver this week, I have Mandisa Thomas. Oh yes, wonderful Mandisa. Of course, she is the president and founder of Black Nonbelievers Incorporated. She's one of my most favorite people in the whole world. I've met her 3 times. I'll meet her again at Skepticon, which of course is coming up at the weekend of November 12th, which is Veterans Day weekend. So I would definitely enjoy it. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while, and I just kept forgetting. But I finally got her on the show, and this time even was difficult because our schedules clashed, and we were supposed to do it the weekend before, but something happened. So it was great. It was great to have her on for her to talk about things, about how allies need to put their money where the mouths are. That's the main subject, but of course, how she got started with Black Nonbelievers, what their goals are, all that kind of good stuff. So it's a great conversation. I really think you'll enjoy it. So without further ado, on to the palaver.
Has In God We Trust invaded your town? Are you tired of government officials who want to plaster In God We Trust on taxpayer-owned property? Are you afraid because your local sheriff placed an In God We Trust decal on the patrol cars? We are here to help. The original motto project is for those who feel the separation of church and state is an important issue and should be honored regardless of your belief or lack thereof. Theists, non-theists, and all free thinkers are welcome. We need your support to show politicians that diversity exists within our nation, and their promotion of a monotheistic religion and push for theocracy will not be tolerated. Stand up and be heard. Join us at originalmotto.us.
I'm Jenica. And I'm Patrick of Real Life Beyond Faith.
And we are a formerly Christian,
currently atheist couple
who take a deep dive into the experience of life after deconversion.
Join us weekly as we talk about topics relating to the journey out of religion.
And interview guests who have their own unique stories to tell.
Look for us on Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Stitcher,
and anywhere else you can find your favorite podcasts.
Welcome to another edition of Palaver here on the Polymath Podcast. This week I have a super special guest who I've met 3 times. Hope I don't mess it up that time. I'm going to meet again at Skepticon. She is the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers. I present to you Mandisa Thomas. How's it going, Mandisa?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me, Chris.
Thank you for coming after like 3 or 4 aborted attempts.
Yes. Our schedules get crazy sometimes.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead, first of all, and just anybody who doesn't know, which I can't imagine there's too many people who listen to the show, but kind of what Black Nonbelievers is about and what your role is.
Sure. Thank you very much once again for having me. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, I am the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers Incorporated, which is based in Atlanta, Georgia. And we are a nonprofit organization which primarily builds support for and helps to increase the visibility of Black atheist agnostics, people who are Blacks who are questioning religion in favor of leaving and who need support with explaining what their position is, and who are also looking for like-minded individuals, because that is still something that is very difficult to find amongst the Black folks. The dynamic is changing in our community. We do have people who are questioning religion, but they won't come out and say that they're atheists. There is still very much a stigma. We combat that stigma within the Black community as far as open identification when it comes to atheism, and also just finding other atheists and Black atheists in particular. And we've been going strong since 2011, so that's 6 years. And we now have 9 other affiliate groups within the United States. We have a group in New York City, in Detroit, in Washington, D.C., in the Metro Orlando area. So we've been expanding our outreach, if you will, to others in the Black community, the Black atheist community. And we host events primarily offline. We advocate for meeting in person and building that in-person community, because it is important for others to actually see us and get a good idea of what we look like and who we are, so that we can better communicate our position, as well as to better we encourage people to feel more comfortable with themselves as atheists, and to show that there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Well, that's awesome. And I know, like I said, I've seen you a couple of times. I've heard you speak a couple of times about the subject. And from what I understand, it is a huge problem in the community. The Black community is kind of as far as being an atheist non-believer, of course, it's a problem in every community, of course, but it seems to me that it's a little more difficult in your particular community. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I absolutely do. And one of the things that people need to understand, and I still don't have a problem explaining and informing why this is an issue. When you take a look historically at Blacks in the United States, going back to slavery within the United States, and how Blacks had to adapt and accept Christianity, it wasn't out of love. It wasn't because most of the people who were brought here wanted to just accept it. It was a religion that was forced upon my ancestors, but it also, after slavery, it became a sustaining institution in the Black community at a time where racism, institutionalized racism, and laws in the United States effectively disfranchised Black folks and terrorized Black folks. And so that is part of a history that we cannot ignore and we cannot escape, no matter how much people try. And so we do acknowledge the role that the church played with building that support. However, it doesn't escape the fact that the doctrine still enslaved us, and also it continues to, we've adapted it with such a tradition that we don't, it's like you can't separate the two. There is no separation of church and being Black for most Black folks. It's like if you give up church and you give up religion, it's like you're giving up being Black, which is absolutely ridiculous. But that comes with it an extra stigma and extra pressure when it comes to discussing religion as well as leaving it behind.
Wow. Okay. So as for yourself, have you had personal experience with this kind of pushback? I'm sure you have.
Oh, absolutely. We can point to the Atheist Alliance of America's conference in Atlanta back in 2015. And it was alongside a Women of Color in Ministries conference. And now, I didn't get there until Friday evening. But the conference had taken place. They started setting up Thursday evening and was in full swing Friday morning. And from what I understand, some of the Black attendees were walking by, rebuking the atheist tables. And I said, well, wait till we get there. So most of the interactions that myself and my sister Bria Crutchfield had, because she was a speaker there, we actually had quite a few good conversations with the attendees from the other conference. There were quite a few Black folks there for that conference and another one. But when they saw us, many were quite intrigued, but many did express like the issues they had, the concerns they had with religion and the church. But there was one woman in particular that Sunday when the conference closed who saw our table, and she became extremely offended. And during our encounter, she was becoming quite rude and belligerent. And so when I told her she didn't have to be disrespectful, that's when she let me have it. I mean, she said that, she could not believe that as a Black woman, I had the nerve to identify as an atheist in front of these white devils, and that I had a slave mentality, and that she was going to bathe me in the blood of Jesus. And I mean, she went on and on and on. And Matthew Facciani, who was one of the speakers there, him and the husband of one of the organizers started recording it because they weren't sure whether or not they were going to have to report her to security. And so they ended up recording some of the interaction, and you could just see how awful this woman was. And so that personified much of the pushback that we tend to get if you are not just open about your atheism, that you're unapologetic about it. Is that you have this notion that, for one, first of all, that you're an atheist. Then you have the nerve to identify as an atheist being Black. It's like you're rejecting our history and culture. You're trying to be white. And in this very current climate of racial tension that has resurfaced, that tends to be an issue with some. So, and actually, that has never really gone away for us. It's interesting to see some be so surprised at this type of stuff. But for many of us in the Black community and those who are aware of what's been going on, this isn't anything new. So. It gave some folks a better understanding of what we have to go through, and which I appreciated. At the time, I was very annoyed, but that particular encounter, personified and it it gave a face to what we go through.
I was going to say, she did you a favor by kind of giving you an example of exactly what you're dealing with.
Yeah, she did, but I personally enjoyed the other encounters where there was a young Black teenager, and she actually asked us, like, what should she as a Christian do to not offend her atheist friend when he sneezes? And so that to me was very encouraging, because many Black folks can get it. It's not like we can't understand the concept. It's just that, I applaud the younger folks who are being more conscious and being more aware of how they're coming across. I can't say the same for some older folks, like the woman who I encountered. But yeah, the woman absolutely did do me a favor. She did us a favor. And for everyone who was standing there who doubted why Black nonbelievers existed, got a better understanding of why we formed this organization.
I can't argue with any of that at all. So as I told the listeners before, I've met you 3 times, I believe. And
I think it's 3 or 4, yeah.
I screwed up on Facebook the first time. It was NanoCon, Secular Saturday, and then Kentucky Free Thought, which was...
Yeah, so it's 3, yeah.
And then you're going to be at Skepticon.
Yes, I will be at Skepticon in November.
Which I really am looking forward to, especially in light of what happened, oh Lord, at the Mythicist Milwaukee thing.
Yes.
Which was a shit show. I mean, that's putting it mildly. Skepticon's going to be more of an SJW fest, I think. And a lot of social justice activists will be there, a lot of speeches along those lines. So I'm hoping that's going to kind of counterbalance the kind of hateful shit that was going down at Mythicist Milwaukee. So. Well,
let me say something. I had the opportunity to speak at Mythinformation 2 in 2015, which in Milwaukee, and I must say that I am dismayed at the turn that it has taken as far as the organization, who they decided to feature at this year's event. I was fortunate enough to share the stage with Killer Priest from Wu-Tang Clan and David Fitzgerald, who I knew he was a invited guest this year. The guys from Mythicist Milwaukee did invite me to come this year. However, I decided not to attend, for one, because I saw the overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly male presence during the conference. So that did make me uncomfortable. And I was also interviewed for their Batman and Jesus documentary. I'm not sure whether I made that cut or not. At this point, it's irrelevant because I didn't go. I didn't attend, and whether they decided to use me or not, I guess I had no decision making over that. But I just decided not to go. I am very, like I said, I'm what always interests me, or was always interesting to me, is that when these types of events come up, first of all, most of the conferences that are put on are still very overwhelmingly white. There's just no getting around that. There are plenty of speakers of color and other Black speakers in particular that people could invite. It just seems like most of the organizers don't do their due diligence. And so for me, I look for, but also many of them are still very, very good conferences. Most of the conferences I attend are and have spoken at are not as hateful as what was displayed at Misinformation or MythCon this year. And so I would just hope that the overall community does not become discouraged by what happened there, because it isn't the only conference in town. It could have probably, and I think for some reason, the drama seemed to attract more people, which I always find to be very astounding. But, hopefully the pushback will make a difference, because I thought it was absolutely horrible who they decided to feature there. Because like you said, it would have taken away from who else was there, but again, I'm not an organizer with them. Again, that was a decision they decided to make, but we do. And this is my first time at Skepticon, which is awesome. I'm very much looking forward to it. And, I'm very, very happy to have been invited. I'm very happy that some of my colleagues like Alex Jules and Bria were invited to speak previous years. And that speaks to the level of respect that the most of the community have for us, which I certainly do appreciate. And yes, I like the fact that there are, there are people who are about more other social justice causes that will be there. I think there's room for all of it, because upon looking at the definition of social justice, it is basically any cause that is, I guess, out of step with the norm. So church and state separation issues are social justice. Other human rights issues, reproductive rights is social justice. Racial injustice is social justice. So, and building support and community for atheists is social justice. So I think in the grand scheme and in the overall scope of things, we are all social justice warriors. And I think that's something that we need to understand, is that it shouldn't be a pissing contest to see whose issue or cause is more important. Of course, there are some things that are more important to each of us, but understanding that, first of all, is important. It is key. But knowing that in the grand scheme of things, we are on a lot of the same side.
I understand what you're saying. I mean, I did have some issues. I don't want to get too much far in the weeds on a lot of this stuff because it's not really the point. But I had been thinking that the lack of diversity in these conferences is kind of bothered me anyway. It seems like it's the same white guys all the time. That's just me. I mean, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't want to. And I'm very very self-conscious, if you will, that I don't want to be that same, Black woman, the go-to for conferences as well. As much as I am honored and appreciate that I am invited to speak at events. And I like to think that I get a lot of great feedback from my presentations, and I appreciate that. I know I bring something to the table that is important, and I do it in a way that people can understand and relate to. So I can kind of pat myself on the back a bit, but I also I also am careful that if there are other speakers that you can invite, please do. I'm not the only game in town when it comes to, speaking about issues of Black atheists, or anything like that. So, I become self-conscious about that as well. Yes. I do like the fact that, some of the speakers who are invited are very well, are worthy of their invitations. But yes, we do have to be careful that we are not the only speakers that are featured, even if we are requested. I mean, I understand that sometimes there's an issue of popularity, but sometimes we do have to kind of take a look at that and be mindful of who we're inviting and making sure that it isn't always just the same people all the time.
Yeah, to me, it almost kind of feels like tokenism or something when they keep inviting the same person over and over again.
Yeah.
And I don't, I don't like that. That's just me personally, I mean, what do I know? But I just feel like there should be more diversity. And that's why after I was throwing a fit about Mythicist, Stephanie Vaughn was like, hey, did you hear about Skepticon?
Mm-hmm.
And I had been keeping track of it, but there was no speakers up until not too long ago because I kept checking the website. And then they started announcing the speakers, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And then I realized Springfield was closer than I thought it was to where I am. So I said, fuck it, I'll just go.
Cool.
So anyway, so let's kind of move to what we had spoken about earlier on Messenger. You had said that you were kind of working currently about getting allies to put their money where their mouth is. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, yes, there's a lot of talk, especially online, about the lack of diversity and what can be done as far as being more not just inclusive, but helping to increase the visibility of of people of color within the movement and people from diverse backgrounds. One thing that I have noticed with some of the folks is that, some people will, they'll point to, Black nonbelievers, which I appreciate. Or what I've seen also is that, we'll talk about, where are, certain people, but then we're sitting on the sidelines like, we're right here. So it's like, I find that there are some folks who, when it comes to, I'll give an example. 4 years ago, at the Great Lakes Atheist Convention that took place in Toledo, Ohio, there was my sister Bria had the unfortunate encounter with a popular blogger at the time who was also a speaker, who chose to try to demean her because she called out a white woman who asked a very racist question of me during my Q&A. And so this person decided to write a blog shaming her, which ended up backfiring on them. And it ultimately turned into a shouting match between other bloggers. And it ultimately ended up becoming about, this person when the issue at hand was the fact that I was asked a very racist question. And that got lost in the shuffle, that people almost forgot about that once it became a shouting match online. So the challenge that I put forth to the other organizations and to the other bloggers and other people who are on the online atmosphere is that, are you actually talking to the people who have these things perpetrated and committed against them? Are you actually talking to the people who are doing the work? And the one thing I can say is that, some of the other organizations that we are affiliated with, like American Atheists, I will say that Dave and American Atheists have been very good allies to Black nonbelievers, as well as some of the other organizations like Ex-Muslims of North America, like Hispanic American Freethinkers. Because whenever there is an issue that they may not be able to discuss, they point folks to us, which is very important. And also what I liked about the Secular Coalition for America as well, and Larry, who's the executive director, is that they are now, they're going to be in the future, and I'm not sure if I should speak on this or not, but they are working on something where they are putting us, in touch with, with Black politicians, the ones who don't know we exist. And because they are the lobby wing, because they focus more on what's going on in D.C., on Capitol Hill, they're now working on amplifying our voices and helping to put us in a position where we are directly speaking to them. So that is what I mean by putting your money where your mouth is, not just talking about the issue, the problem of lack of diversity, actually putting us in touch with the people who need to hear us if they don't know about us already. And that's anyone, Black, white, whomever. And also donating. Our organization is a 501c3 and donations are tax deductible. That's also important. And even if people don't think that they can help in exposure, certainly they can help financially. There's always ways that people can contribute, not to just and also just listening, making sure that y'all are getting the most accurate information from the people who are actually doing it. Don't just go by osmosis. Just kind of actually reach out and touch. Hey, how are you? That's one of the reasons why events, conferences, and conventions are important, because, and then also the regular events that people put on because the community isn't just made up of conferences. It's also made up of people who are hosting regular meetups locally. And we shouldn't forget about that. We shouldn't forget about the podcast community, which is yourself included, and others who I appreciate and who I've met in person, which is awesome. So when it comes to, when I say people putting their money where their mouth is, just making sure that you aren't just shouting about things, online. If there are ways that you can help amplify our voices, like this podcast, and if people are looking for recommendations for speakers or for any other subject or anything else, then just make sure, because sometimes all it takes is a click, and that costs you nothing. That doesn't cost, that isn't a donation. That is time put in that is worth it when you create those connections. So that is a number of things that can be done as far as facilitating more action and more growth. So those are just a few. So,
excuse me. So as far as because I know for myself and a lot of people, Facebook seems to be their main social network, because I don't like going. I don't like going out and doing the convention thing. For me, has been a way for me to be able to almost make myself interact with people, because I'm not terribly good at it. So as far as what people like myself who are a little less prone to be out in real life, I guess, what would you say, kind of digging a little bit on, as far as if we're on social media and we come into these interactions with people who seem not to understand what the problems are. What would you suggest to them?
What I would suggest, for one, is to at least have a list of materials available that they can point to if they want to, if they want to do some more research on the subject. I know I have personally gotten weary of those who just ask the blatant question of, why does there have to be a Black Nonbelievers? Why does there have to be this, that, and the third? But it gets a little tiring sometimes. But if I know the person is actually, or the individuals are open-minded, then I will engage. I would say to because I'll tell you, being online, it is easy for those flame wars to start. And I think that's a part of the interaction, or maybe lack thereof, because the computer gives people a whole lot of balls that they wouldn't have face to face. So, but what I would recommend is trying, because I always err on the side of diplomacy for myself. I don't always recommend it for everyone. I understand that it isn't always the go-to, because sometimes it's good to vent. But I am, in my role, I try to be diplomatic and try to be tactful in some explanations. And if I know that there are reference materials or others that people can talk to or discuss this subject with, then I'll try to do that. I also am very, because I know that, gosh, sometimes it's difficult to make people understand things, especially when folks are on their emotional high. So I try to gauge that also. What I also recommend doing is, if you see that the conversation isn't going anywhere, I would say disengage. I'm not gonna keep arguing with people who aren't trying to listen. So there are a couple of steps that I take in trying to combat, like if there's on social media. I don't really do Twitter much. Yeah, I don't really do Twitter. Yeah. I see some of the stuff that goes on there, and I'll just I'm a see and scroll type of person. If I think that this isn't going to be something that's going to be productive, if I don't think it's going to be productive, I will move past it. It's taken some time to get there, though, because now remember, I've been involved with this community now for 6 years. It hasn't always been smooth sailing for me. It still isn't, but there was a time where, and it isn't even worth rehashing, but I've kind of been there with the arguments. I've been there with people who were trying to start shit, and these were other Black atheists. So there's a whole nother world that some of you just aren't aware of that we've gone through. And so I've kind of, I've taken some hits and some bruises, but what's been most important for me is to keep my focus on the people who need us. And that has made all the difference. So I would say, keeping your focus and at least trying to explain what the overall issue is, why it's a problem, who they can talk to, and if none of that seems to be working, then just shut it down and move on, because we're not going to be able to help everybody, including other atheists. And that's going to be the subject of my presentation at Skepticon, which I won't give away right now. But if you're at the American Atheist Convention, you saw this presentation, but there's no harm in doing it again, because other people need to hear it. So those are just some suggestions that I have, or what I would recommend at this point.
Yeah, excuse me. There's a tendency, it seems, for people who are on Facebook quite a bit to feel like they need to keep going with the conversation after the fact, that obviously it's not productive anymore. And I personally think there's no point in that.
Yeah, I agree. There are just some people who, like I said, their computer and being behind that screen gives them such, they're able to puff up their chest, as behind those screens. And I think sometimes it's unfortunate because, I understand our community in particular is made up of, the socially awkward as well as the socially inept. People who don't know how to interact with others in person, and they don't seem to care to, and they think that their intellect will carry them, which isn't always true. And see, me, I am, I've been in customer service. I've engaged people pretty much all my life. So even though there are some quirks that I have, I'm able to engage, and it's partially because I really like genuinely, talking to people, and I like being nice, and I like being, tactful and fair. There are some others who aren't like that. And while I can understand it, it's good for us to do some work, because if we are really going to resolve these diversity issues, it's going to take for people to step outside those comfort zones, which unfortunately the internet and social media tends to foster. I've called it a security blanket, because that's what it serves as. Sometimes the internet, Facebook, Twitter serves as some people's security blankets, and they won't let them go, which is unfortunate, because the components of this community aren't just online. At some point you will need to engage with folks regularly, and fighting all day just isn't going to do it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because, people like me, we'll just sit there on Facebook and argue. At some point, you got to get out and actually do something. You can't just sit behind a computer all day. Especially nowadays, especially what's going on, with Trump and all that. All the kind of resurgence of the white supremacist movement and all that.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely, we need to do something. We can't just let that shit go,
Not at all. And that's why it is important to research and look into the secular organizations that are putting in that work, because there are a lot of them. There are a lot of us who, whether it is through the political lobbying, whether it is the separation of church and state issues, whether it is recovering from religion, which is another sister organization that I love, who are helping people on the individual and the internal issues that we have. Those are all important, and it's good to know that there is a community out there that is, instead of focusing on it is important for us to point out what is wrong and what we can't stand, but support the organizations that are working on it. That is the next step. They're out there. Even, like I said, even if you cannot contribute money, you can contribute time. You can volunteer. You can work. You can do work from behind that computer. So there are a lot of good and productive things that can be done besides just arguing about issues all day long. It's just a matter of getting people to do it.
Now, one thing you talked about, you like to be diplomatic, and you like to have these conversations in a calm way, but there are times I've seen you on Facebook say
oh, heck yeah.
Things like, just because I'm nice doesn't mean that, well, I won't say what you said, but
yeah. I don't know if we can curse on this podcast.
Oh yeah. No, we can. I just didn't want to put words in there.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. I have said it before. Make no mistake that I will become that bitch if I have to. I've had to be that bitch to a lot of people, because there are some who will take kindness for weakness. And you can't be in my position as who is considered a leader. And I appreciate that I'm considered a leader and someone who is of influence. You cannot build what I have worked to build and not have come across folks who will try you and who still will try you. And for me, I've had to say, and I grew up, my background is not one of privilege. Those who know me know I am from the projects in New York City. And there is a certain survival instinct that you have to have no matter what. And I have it. So I don't like to let that side come out of me. But when I do, it's like, you better beware. Because yes, I have had to shut people down. I've had to throw people out. I've had to, I've had to put people in their place. And, so like I said, I err on the side of diplomacy and being nice, but oh yes, please don't ever think that, I won't, and one thing that I can appreciate that people take away from my presentations is that I will tell you what you need to know. I won't sugarcoat it, but that you have a better understanding of what we go through, and we can walk away from it understanding and saying, you know what, hey, I get it. Thank you. Because it doesn't always have to be as harsh, but it does have to be direct. And there's a difference that some people don't get. And so I can appreciate that people respect that about my delivery. And I don't make any apologies for it, because it doesn't happen often. Because those of you who've ever interacted with me, y'all know that I'm gonna give you the best of me and to be genuine. So if I have to become that bitch, then you know it's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, usually when it gets to that point with somebody who's generally more of a diplomatic type or whatever, and they get to that point, that means you done fucked up.
Basically, yes.
Because it really takes a lot to get somebody like that to that point to begin with, and I'm there with the popcorn, okay? Because I want to see how your ass gonna get torn down. So let me get the popcorn and watch what's going on. How often do you think you've had to pull out the bitch card, would you say?
Oh gosh, a couple of times over the years. It isn't as often as it used to be, but I will say I do a lot of preemptive. I do a lot of preemptive work. If I think that someone, I tend to, I may not say too much on Facebook, I may not say too much on social media, but I observe a lot. And there are some people who I can observe their actions and their behaviors and say, nope, I'm not gonna do this. So it's gotten me to a point where I know how to avoid certain trouble and certain problems if I have to. So I would say it was a lot in the beginning. In 2011, from 2011 to 2017, I would say it's I don't know how many times, but it's decreased dramatically, because I had to learn and grow. I had to learn what to respond to and what not. I had to learn who to engage and who not. And so in my growth and in, like I said, in what I see and the work I do and who I interact with, I've learned how to better gauge this stuff so that I don't have to pull out the bitch card all the time. So I would say it's been less than 10 this year. So probably maybe even less than that. But it may happen. It does happen, but not very often.
I mean, that's good. I mean, I think if you use it judiciously, it kind of gives it more of an impact, because, you don't want to look like that's all you are, but at the same time, you got to show people that you're willing to do that when necessary, and especially ahead of an organization like yours. Mm-hmm. So, I guess I should have asked this at the beginning, but I'm not very good with planning things out. What led you to start Black Nonbelievers in the beginning? Oh,
sure. Well, to give a bit of background about myself, I wasn't formally raised religious. I was raised secular. Being here in the Atlanta area, in a predominantly black city, or very heavily populated black city, as progressive as Atlanta is, there's a lot of religious folks here. And so when I came around to re-identifying as an atheist in 2010, I started looking for meetups and other people that I could meet. And it would have not just black atheists, but atheists in general. And so I had, in speaking with other black atheists online, though, they would tell me about their experiences with attending predominantly white meetups. And so I just blew it off like, oh, I can understand, but hopefully this will be different for me. We're all atheists. This shouldn't be, this shouldn't be an issue. Got to my first meetup though, and it was an issue. And without going into too many details, the only other Black atheist who was in attendance at this meetup, we started talking, and I said, there have to be more Black atheists out here. Perhaps there just isn't an initiative. Perhaps they just don't know about the community, or they just aren't making themselves more available, or they just aren't looking. There has to be a way that we can help bring out more of us. And so with that, we decided to start Black Nonbelievers of Atlanta. And as an in-person fellowship where we hosted our own events, but also reached out and engaged the other secular groups in the Atlanta area and to see what the problem was and how we could go about, rectifying it. So from there, our first meetup that we had, which was our first general meeting, there were about 14, 15 of us there, which was more than we had, of course, ever seen at any other local meetup. So that told us that what we were doing was important. And so from there, it was to help bring out more of us for various reasons that are valid when engaging the secular community as well as the Black community. And so we're definitely looking to bridge those gaps there.
Well, and you've expanded out, like you said. How many different cities you say you are in right now?
We're now up to 10. Our most recent affiliate was established in the Portland, Oregon area. We are in the process of establishing a few more affiliates in various cities because there is interest. The only thing is getting people to remain committed to running the groups, which is a problem with most meetup groups, period, not just ours. Because when you have a volunteer initiative, it can be very daunting to keep things up and to keep up the momentum. But we try to do that as much as possible. But yes, we have expanded now to our 10th affiliate.
So what do y'all do as far as activities?
Well, in the Atlanta area, we host general meetings where sometimes we have guest speakers. They are discussion forums. Sometimes we do movie nights. Sometimes we go bowling. Sometimes we may collaborate on a service project. I know our Charlotte group works with the atheists helping the homeless out there. So we collaborate and we partner with other groups. We table. We also just sometimes we'll just do more casual stuff. We'll try to incorporate them with other activities that are going on in the area. And we've also put on our 5th anniversary celebration last year in 2016, in which we had some great speakers there. It was a showcase of how far we've come as an organization and how far we've come in this community and the allies that we've built. And we're also coming up on our convention at sea in November, which will feature some of the speakers who have come through our doors. And some of the more prominent Black atheist speakers, Alex Jules, Bridget Crutchfield, Jeremiah Kamara, Sakibu Hutchinson. So these are our rising stars, not just rising stars, but these are atheists in the community that some may not know of, but who need to know. So it isn't like we've just been sitting here, waiting for the community to recognize us. We've been putting in work. And even though it may not be familiar to some now, we've been doing this for a while. And so, which is another reason why I go back to people not being discouraged by what they see at events like MythCon, or because we have, again, our segment of the community has been putting in work to feature our voices and make sure that we're magnified as well. Like I said, so we're not looking for a handout in this. We're continuing to do what we do. And we want to make sure that people know it. And if you know about it, then make sure others know about it. Spreading that good word is always important.
Yeah, you do put in the work because I see you everywhere. I mean, and presumably you actually have a real job, or whatever.
I do. I'm employed full time. I have a family. I have 3 children. My oldest is in college. I have two young boys, and so yeah, and still working on Black Nonbelievers as a volunteer in this movement. And I really wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, because it was something that was important to me, and it has cost me some personal relationships. It cost me personal time, but it's worth it, because growing up, I've always had an activist. I've had an activist base. I've always had an activist, mindset. So this is right up my alley.
What do you think your role as an organization is as far as the social justice movement is concerned?
Well, our role is to make sure that we are, again, building that support and that for other Black atheists. First of all, for those who think they're alone, they have to know that they aren't the only ones out there, and that there is an organized effort to help bring us together. Now, from there, they can decide how they want to further amplify their voices. There are many Black atheists who are more passionate about the Black Lives Matter movement. There are some Black atheists who are more passionate about the political sphere. There are some who are more passionate about LGBT rights, and some more of these at the same time. But what is important is that for us as an organization, no matter what because we don't take one stance on this, because our members are diverse. We don't all agree on the same things. But what is important is that others know that there are more Black atheists out there are more Black nonbelievers, and that we do get together and discuss issues that are pertinent to our existence, and that in encountering us, they will feel more empowered, not as an individual, but also as a collective, to be able to speak, and to be able, to expand their voices to the people who need to hear us. Is that we will not go away. We are not just one homogenous Black community. We're not one homogenous secular community. And that there are more of us out here who need to be heard, and that we're going to do what we can to make sure they are. So that is our role, primarily in this movement.
Do you get involved in political causes at all? I mean,
as a 501c3 organization, we're limited as to the political involvement that we can have. Like I said, we are a member organization for the Secular Coalition for America as far as that representation. No, do we endorse candidates? No, we're not allowed to do that. Churches aren't allowed to do that either. But it seems like they get around that. Yeah. Certainly, I find politics to be very interesting. I try to stay as aware of the issues as I can. But as far as getting out there and and lobbying and stuff, now I did participate in SCA's lobby day. For those who aren't familiar with SCA, it's the Secular Coalition for America. I did participate in their lobby day, and I got a chance to meet Congressman John Lewis, which was awesome. So yeah, that was just great. And I also got a chance to speak and also at their awards dinner, and there were some politicians there who got a chance to hear from an openly and unapologetically Black atheist woman. So that in itself is very, very, that I hope was powerful enough, or was very powerful, period. So I would say, so as far as like politics in the political sphere, not really, because there's just so much, that I have to do with my time. And also I am, limited by what our organization can do. And I have to be careful about who I represent, because I don't speak for everyone. And so it would be disingenuous of me to push being Black nonbelievers in an organization that didn't represent all of us. But the fact that, so I am very careful and I'm mindful how I represent, especially in politics.
Yeah, I had forgotten about the 501c3 thing. And of course, also your organization is made up of people and they're not monolithic.
Yes.
They're all different backgrounds, even though they're all atheists, doesn't necessarily mean they agree on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And as we've seen, just because you're an atheist doesn't make you anything else necessarily. So.
Oh yeah.
And that's a whole.
Atheists, humanists. There are a lot of folks with a lot of baggage and a lot of issues that they still haven't confronted yet, and that's one of the reasons why people's internal being, if you will, is at the heart of my activism, because you can gauge a lot of folks by what they deem passionate to them and why they do it. And so I observe that very, very carefully. And it's important to me that people are comfortable with themselves as individuals, so that they can be activists in a healthy way, so that they're not just pointing the fingers at other people, that they're not just looking to start drama wherever they can, because after a while that can become counterproductive. It is counterproductive. So when folks start to work on themselves as individuals, and this isn't anything like spiritual or woo or no Deepak Chopra type of thing. You don't have to do that. You don't need to rely on anything that is deemed superstition or anything like that. We can, it is good for us to reflect on what it is that we need to do and actually do it.
For some reason, you just mentioned Deepak Chopra. I don't know if you know this, but there's a random phrase generator where it basically a bunch of words, and they throw it together and something that Deepak Chopra would say, and it's completely
nonsense. Yeah.
It's pretty funny. But yeah, I see what you're saying. Everybody needs to find their own path. I think, me personally, I have gotten away from identifying as an atheist primarily. I consider myself more of a humanist.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because of some of the things I've seen lately, and the kind of a rift, I guess, they keep perpetrating, even though I don't ever think there was one monolithic community. I mean, people are different, and so I personally am more geared towards the secular humanist aspect, more so than, I guess, the atheist aspect. Would you say you are?
I identify as an atheist, humanist, all of that. I have grown to accept saying atheist, because for one, it is still important. I don't think the asshole should define us. It is going to be important for us to continue to say that we're atheists, even though we may identify as secular humanists. Because if we don't believe in God, then we're atheists. That's it. Now that again, that doesn't define the rest of us or like the rest of our being. And it's important for us to, and we shouldn't be one-dimensional as individuals. I think that the atheist identity is still very important, because as we are still combating the stigma of atheism and what it is and what it is not, it is still very important for us to openly identify. I hold true to that always. Now, do I agree with every atheist out there? No. Do I like every atheist out there? No. And I'm unapologetic about that as well. I do think, though, that I've always been very mindful to make sure that none of these labels become trendy or just buzzwords. I'm a humanist because, I actually see some people who tout the humanism as being better than being an atheist, which I find to be ridiculous. Same thing with other atheists who feel like, well, they're better than other people. It's almost like it almost becomes like what the believers do, what the Christians do. And we're like, wow, wait a minute. I mean, I understand we're all human beings and this tends to happen, but it's like, wow, does it have to happen? Does it have to be that, that we're putting our labels out there to try and to use as swords, if you will. And so I try to be mindful of that for myself.
Yeah, I can understand that. There's just a lot of infighting going on lately. It's kind of discouraging, but you're right. We need to concentrate on the positive things, I think, and what brings us together.
Right. And I also want to throw in there that, there have been some white folks who have, asked questions of the Black atheists and who've wanted to pick our brains. I just want us to want y'all to be careful not to use us just as thought experiments, to just take what you need from it and then not engage us. This can't be a one-time conversation. It cannot be a one-time invitation, excuse me. Gosh, my English is all off right now. It cannot be a one-time invitation. It cannot be a one-time engagement. If this is something that you are holding yourself true to and that you are passionate about, you have to be consistent, especially with engaging other Black atheists, even if it isn't me. I'm not liked by everyone in this community, and I'm fine with that. But if you truly respect the work that we do, it is best to engage us on a regular basis. I know, we engage each other a lot, Chris. You and I do, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the allies that I do have who will have certain discussions. It goes beyond the scope of the movement because there are other interests that we have. I like talking to people about plenty, different things. And so that is what's going to make the difference when we're able to show that we relate on so many different levels. That will really start breaking down a lot of barriers that we have. And I will hold myself. I stand firmly by that.
Well, it's funny you should mention as far as people shouldn't just come to you to pick your brain as a thought experiment. I find that people have seen trans people, and LGBT people in general, but especially trans community, since, all of a sudden everybody, is talking about, even though they've been around forever, it's not a new thing. But as they become more politically, not politically, sort of more visible, I guess.
Yes.
It seems like more people are doing exactly what you're saying, but like you said, I don't want it for people just to, hey, can I ask you some questions? Okay, never mind, I don't care anymore. Actually get in there and kind of understand what's going on, and then you can act as an ally to other people who maybe have some questions. And if you obviously you want to point to a member of that community, first, but if they're not available, then maybe you can fill in or whatever. And I think that's important.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I mean, far too often, I don't think we let the communities who are affected speak for themselves, it seems like. I mean, some allies want to just get out there, and some of it, I understand that you just want to kind of be helpful, and get out there and explain things. But if you've got, like, for example, Black people, BLM movement or anything like that, if you've got some friends or people defer to them first.
Yes. Agreed. Yes.
There seems to be too much of, even though it may be well-intentioned, it seems like sometimes people just try to take it upon themselves to do the explaining when really it should be the people who are affected.
Yes. Agreed. There is nothing wrong with having that background knowledge. I think that there are some white folks in this movement who feel like they cannot fully explain it, which isn't always true. It is always good to have that, and it's going to come a point in time where y'all will need to check each other. I mean, really, and I know we said this even in Kentucky, is that it's not always it can't always be up to us to explain what the problem is. There's going to be there are white folks who are capable of explaining it. And it's important that y'all are armed with this knowledge and with this information and the ability to do it, as well as defer to, the folks of color who are experiencing it. I would say that, if you are, again, going out of your comfort zone, yes, defer to those who are living it first, but then also have that knowledge for yourself and not just something that becomes talking points to the point where you sound, insincere. So I think that's important for all of us, because from my experience, I've seen insincerity all across the board. So there's some work that a lot of folks need to do.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between reading something and, kind of reading it almost by rote and actually understanding what was it reading comprehension, I guess you could say?
Yeah.
And really kind of getting in the weeds and kind of understanding the background and, what all it involves, as opposed to just like the talking points, like you said.
Yeah.
I think that's important. All right, Mandisa. Well, let's go ahead and wrap things up. I don't want to keep you too long, but Could you tell everybody where they can find your organization?
Sure. You can find us. We are on the World Wide Web at blacknonbelievers.org. You can find us on Twitter at capital B and capital N non-believers. B non-believers, the B and the N are capitalized. We have a public page on Facebook, Black Nonbelievers. The links to all of our affiliate groups are on our website at blacknonbelievers.org. And you can find me at on Facebook, Mandisa Thomas. And we are, that's pretty much, and you can find us pretty much almost anywhere that you find a, most conferences and conventions. There are quite a few where you will see us tabling. So, and we update our events on our meetup calendar as well as on our website calendar as well. So definitely take a look at our website. We also have a YouTube channel at Black Nonbelievers Inc, all lowercase, if you'd like to see some of our previous presentations and things that we've done.
I did not know that. Okay, I'm going to have to check that out. Mm-hmm. And, of course, to buy some swag, some Black Nonbelievers swag. Uh-huh. Yeah, y'all got that stuff going on with it. I put it up. I'm going to buy a T-shirt at Skepticon. I'm going to need you to sign it, though.
Okay, sure. We'll have our hoodies there, too. So, we have all kind of swag.
Yeah, I was impressed by you. It's not just T-shirts. Y'all have, keychains and stuff. All kinds.
We have buttons. We have shot glasses. We have coffee mugs. Yeah, we got all kind of stuff. Branding is everything.
Exactly. So, I look forward to that, and I look forward to seeing you again. And I really want to thank you for doing what you do. I mean, because I think it's extremely important. And you put in the work, like you said. You don't fuck around. You're everywhere.
Thank you.
It's important.
Thank you, and thank you, and I appreciate you having me on the show. I am always honored and humbled whenever I am asked to be on a show, because without you all, we wouldn't be able to continue to do what we do. So I definitely appreciate it.
All right, Mandisa. Well, take care of yourself, okay?
You too, and I will see you at Skepticon.
All right, sounds good.
That'll do it for this episode of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. I want to thank Mandisa Thomas for coming on and talking to me. Of course, she is super awesome, and I'm so glad I got to talk to her, and I'm also super excited to be able to see and hear her again at Skepticon November 12th. Y'all need to come out if you can. It is actually free to get in. Of course, you're encouraged to donate, and the hotel where it's at is kind of expensive, but I got some in Motel 6, so I'm going cheap because I don't really care. So if you can go, I encourage you to do so. And hit me up if you do, so we can meet up and you can get a picture with my awesome self, because that should be your life's ambition. Anyway, of course, if you want to check out the podcast, the homepage is thepodunkpolymath.com. Of course, the music is by ... You could check out their music at cdbaby.com/cd/... The logo, new and improved by Jeff Prebick Jr., who is on Twitter at Pit Atheist, although I question his love of the Penguins, but he can't help it. He's from Pittsburgh, I guess. You can check me out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, under the Podunk Polymath. Twitter is at Podunk Polymath. Email podunkpolymath@gmail.com. Of course, if you want to become part of the Patreon posse, you can come to patreon.com/thepodunkpolymath. For as little as $1 an episode, you can have the privilege of knowing that you helped somebody who's probably one of the most awesome people you know, which says something about your friends. You need to really reevaluate your life. Anyway, you can call in for the voicemail line 615-378-POPO 7676. Leave me a voicemail and insult me or not. It's up to you. Of course, if you want to become part of the Podunk Polymath Podcast Posse Facebook group, where all the cool kids are, you can go to facebook.com/group/the Podunk Polymath Podcast Posse. All those words are separated by periods. And of course, the online store is at zazzle.com/podunk_polymath. Get you some swag. I need to update with the new logo, and I keep saying that and I keep forgetting to do it. Of course, if you look on the side of the page, you can see where you can follow the blog on WordPress, up to 57 followers. Follow me on Twitter. There's a Twitter box and a follow button there you can look at. There's a PayPal donate button if you want to give me some money without patroning. I don't think that's a word. Patroning? I don't know. Anyway, patronizing? Don't patronize me. There's also buttons for subscribe on RSS, Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. There's also a button for Patreon. There's a Facebook like button thing there where you can like the page straight from it there. Recent posts and recent comments. Again, I want to thank Mandisa for coming on. One of the most awesome people I know. And she walks the walk, talks the talk, and does all the things. So if you want to, you can't find a better role model for actually getting shit done in this movement, because she actually does shit. Unlike some people like me who just talk about it. Anyway, yeah, she's definitely an inspiration. At least I think so. And if you don't think so, you can go fuck yourself for all I care. I know, I'm really kind. Also, as I said before, go check out the rally. If you're in the area, hit me up if you need a ride or anything, and we'll see if we can organize something if you're in the general vicinity, of course. I'm in Fairview, West Nashville area, so if you need help, we probably can arrange something, so let me know. And we need to get as many people there as possible to remind these white supremacist fucksticks that their kind is not welcome here or anywhere for that matter. Anyway, okay. Well, again, thanks for joining me. Sorry it took a week off, but you know I'm old and shit, so I need time sometimes. All right. Well, until next time, y'all take it easy now, okay?